Good afternoon, students. I'm going to start a new unit of the eukaryotic diversity, and starting with the unit, some of the points which I am going to cover today. And eukaryotes, okay, there are basic differences between eukaryotes and the prokaryotes, which you may have studied in your semester 1 of the microbiology. Okay, and in the last two units we discussed about the prokaryotic diversity of the bacteria as well as the archaea. And the unit 4 basically comprises of the eukaryotic diversity, which includes fungi, algae, and protozoa. So moving forward with our lecture, okay, the points which I am going to cover, okay, is fungi, algae, and protozoa. And the points given here are the points which are as per syllabus of the Saurashtra University, which includes general characteristics, occurrence, structure, and reproduction in mucor and aspergillus, and the economic importance of the fungi. Next comes the algae, and it includes general characteristics, occurrence, and the ultrastructure of the algae, and the economic importance of the algae. Next comes the protozoa, which includes general characteristics, occurrence, ultrastructure again, and the economic importance of the protozoa. Now, simply I'm going to read out this difference between prokaryote and eukaryote, okay, so that you can revise them. Prokaryotes have one singular, one circular chromosome, which is not enclosed in a membrane, and whereas in the case of eukaryotes, okay, paired chromosomes in a nuclear membrane. There are no histones in the case of prokaryotes, and in the case of eukaryotes, histones are basically present. No organelles in the case of prokaryotes, whereas in the case of eukaryotes, organelles are present. Peptidoglycan cell walls are present in prokaryotes but not in the eukaryotes. And the prokaryotic ones divide by the means of a binary fission, and the eukaryotes involves mitotic spindles. So what is the major differences between fungi, algae, and protozoa? Okay, just the overview of the groups which I am going to cover in the unit 3. It's just an overview. Okay, fungi, algae, and protozoa. So starting with the newt kingdom, starting with the kingdom, okay, fungi is included in the kingdom fungi, algae in the protist, and protozoa also in the protist. Nutritional type: fungi are chemoheterotrophs, algae are photoautotrophs, and the protozoa are chemoheterotrophs. Multicellularity level: fungi, okay, all of them are multicellular, but except the yeast, which are unicellular. Algae, some are unicellular, some are multicellular, and protozoa are always unicellular. Cellular arrangement: unicellular, filamentous, and maybe fleshy. Okay, fleshy in the case of especially mushrooms. And algae, again, they may be unicellular or may live in colony or may also may be filamentous, and also the presence of tissues have been observed in the case of multicellular algae. Protozoa are unicellular, and how do they acquire food? Okay, food acquisition. Okay, in all the cases it's of a absorptive mode of nutrition, but in the case of protozoa, ingestive mode of nutrition is also a one of the important parameter. And characteristics, specialized characters. Okay, fungi produce sexual and asexual spores. Algae also produce some of them, but their specialty is the presence of the pigments. Their specialty is the presence of pigments. And the motility, which is basically is present, is in the case of protozoa. Okay, so now moving forward with the general characters of the fungi. Okay, so how do you define a fungi? Okay, how do you define a fungi, or what are the general position of the fungi in the world, and what is the general position of the fungi in the world? So the biodiversity of earth, okay, which contains millions of species. Okay, yeah, millions of species of plants, bacteria, animals, fungi, protozoa, algae, etc., whatever. Okay, there are many of them. So despite the research, okay, of the more million of the species, only 1.4 million species have been described, and the ecology or the role of these species in the ecosystems has been studied only or hardly 1%. Okay, only or hardly 1% of the diversity has been studied. Okay, we know more about economical plants and animals. Okay, but we have very less information about fungi and bacteria, despite their important roles in the ecological cycles. And till now only about 2 lakh species of fungi have been described, but it is estimated there are around 1 to 1.5 million species of fungi. Okay, and in contrast, most of the bird species and a mammal species have been described. So you can see the differences between them. Okay, more number of birds are basically described as compared to fungi and bacteria. Okay, so the fungi are basically a group of eukaryotic organisms that are of great practical and scientific interest to the microbiology. And as you already studied, the study of fungi is called mycology. The study of fungi is called mycology. Okay, and why they have a practical and scientific interest? The one of the good reason is for this is basically obvious that the fungi are basically of a eukaryotic, okay, and have a microscopic cellular dimensions. Okay, and the gross appearance of the many multicellular fungi is similar to each and every one of us. Okay, but may have also seen a blue greenish type growth on the oranges and various other fruits also, gray growth on some of the breads, even the greenish growth on various food. Okay, so basically, as well as mushrooms, we must have seen. Okay, so these are the basic various morphologies of the fungi. Okay, and basically they are divided into molds and yeast. Molds are basically multicellular ones, whereas the yeast are the unicellular ones. Okay, so simply, what are fungi? There are lots of fungi. Okay, but they all have something one in common. Most of the fungi are basically saprophytes. are basically saprophytes. Okay, get their nutrients from dead and alive. Some of them are even pathogenic. Okay, and mold. Okay, mold, which is basically a multicellular type of fungi. It's a group. It's not the name of the fungi. It's a group of a fungi. Okay, where the microbes are made up of one cell. But the mold type of fungus is different, where a few cells stick together to form a threads which look like the branches, and they use these threads to feed on nutrients like those in the species of the fungi covered with the bread. Okay, you must have seen the presence of fungi on the bread. Okay, same example is given here, where you can clearly see the colored patches here. Okay, different types of color patches which are found in the bread, and the example given here is often black bread mold Rhizopus stolonifer. Okay, Rhizopus stolonifer. Okay, and some of the fungi are also parasitic ones. Okay, which may cause an infection. Okay, and one of the disease is called as athlete's foot disease. It's known as athlete's foot disease. Okay, and dry yeast, you all know, is an important ingredient in the baking. Okay, because it produces carbon dioxide gas which helps the air pockets in the food such as breads. Okay, mushrooms, they are multicellular ones, and can be identified easily. Okay, some of them are edible, some of them are non-edible, some are even poisonous ones. Okay, and one of the speciality of the cell wall of the fungi is basically presence of chitin. Okay, is a chitin. So the given here, okay, one of the examples where chitin is present in another one is also basically a crab. Is a crab, and to be considered a fungus, a microbe cell walls must be made up of a material called chitin. And chitin is the same substance that crab cells and insect exoskeletons are made up of. Okay, chitin is exactly the same substance that crab cells and insect exoskeletons are basically made up of. Okay, chitin is exactly the same. So, and what are the different types of fungi and which are the examples of fungi? Okay, we'll discuss it later. So please have a look at the video right now. Okay. Please have a look of the video, an introduction to the fungi. Okay, this video from was a Frank Giorgio. Okay, and now moving forward with the general characters of the fungi. Okay, moving forward with the general characters. Do you know which is the or which is the biggest organism ever? They are dinosaurs or blue whales or these trees. Okay, which is the biggest organism? Okay, you might be surprised to know that the biggest organism is basically a fungi. Okay, biggest organism, it's an fungi. Okay, the photograph given here is the biggest fun organism present on the earth. Okay, and its name is Armillaria ostiae. Its name is Armillaria ostiae. Okay, so it's an honey fungus and divided, thought to be the largest single living organism in the world. Okay, and covering about 8.8 square kilometers. Okay, covering about 8.8 square kilometers, a single one organism. Okay, and thought to be around 2400 years old. And while the parasitic fungi, this is a parasitic fungi which can be destructive to the forest as it causes root disease in trees. Okay, and some of them also say that it is again a testy one. It's a testy one because you all know mushrooms are basically edible fungi. Okay, so the definition of the fungi, and fungi, as I told you, are eukaryotic, heterotrophic, filamentous with the chitin containing cell wall, spore bearing organisms with the absorptive mode of nutrition and do not have chlorophyll and reproduce sexually as well as asexually. Okay, this one is a definition of a fungi. Okay, simply remember they are eukaryotes, heterotroph, filamentous, chitin containing cell wall. Okay, and are able to produce spores and have an absorptive mode of nutrition, and as they do not have photosynthetic mechanism due to which chlorophyll are absent, and they can reproduce sexually and asexually. Okay, and the name of fungi is derived from their most obvious representatives, mushrooms. Okay, called mushrooms. In the Greek it's called mix, and in Latin basically fungus. And these are eukaryotes and share with plants the possession of a cell wall in a liquid filled intracellular vacuoles and the microscopically streaming of the cytoplasm, and almost lack motility. Okay, this fungi generally lacks a motility feature. Okay, and microbiologists use the term fungi or fungus to describe eukaryotic organisms that are spore bearing and have a absorptive type of nutrition which lack chlorophyll and reproduce sexually or asexually. The scientists who study fungi are called mycologists. Okay, and the study of fungi is called mycology. The study of fungi is called mycology. Okay, so genetic studies have shown that the fungi are basically more closely related to animals than the plants, and the study of fungal toxins and their effects is called mycotoxicology. Okay, myco comes from the fungi and toxicology comes from the toxins, so mycotoxicology. And the diseases caused by fungi animals are known as mycosis, okay. So fungi is basically a member of large group of eukaryotic organisms that includes microorganisms such as yeast and molds. And the word molds in the case of British English is molds, molds. Okay, you can use both of them, as well as the more familiar word of in the case of fungi is basically mushrooms to the common people. Okay, and which are the distinguishing characters of the fungi now. Okay, and before starting that, some of the parasites and some of the fungi can also cause disease to humans, plants as well as animals. Okay, so they have a wide variety of parasitic habitat also. Okay, now starting with the distinguishing characters, they are large, diverse, widespread group of organisms, the molds, mushrooms and yeasts. The molds, mushrooms and yeast. Okay, fungi are eukaryotic and they are the members of the domain Eukarya. They are the members of the domain Eukarya and they contain membrane enclosed nucleus and several other organelles. They do not have chlorophyll and they are chemoorganotrophic organisms Now, the body of the fungi is called a thallus. Okay, I will show you the diagram of the fungi and the next in this lecture itself. And the thallus may consist of a single cell, as found in the case of yeast, and molds are basically multicellular. Okay, and thallus may consist of filaments which are about 5 to 10 micrometer across and that are commonly branched, as found in the case of molds. They may be also of a longer length also. Okay, it depends on the species of the fungi. And the yeast cells or the mold filaments is basically surrounded by a true cell wall. Okay, there are exceptions in this case, in the case of a slime mold. Some are dimorphic ones also. Some fungi dimorphic. What do you mean by dimorphic? Dimorphic fungi are those fungi, okay, which have both mold, which have both mold and yeast forms, which have both mold and yeast forms. Okay. Now, what are characteristics of the fungi? Fungi, you may have a confusion that they are plants, but fungi are basically known are not plants. Okay, they are not photosynthetic. Okay, they are eukaryotes, non-motile, and most of them are saprops. What are saprops? Saprops are those organisms, or saprophytic are those organisms which survive on dead organisms. Okay, which survive on the dead organisms. So the characters of the fungi, please look at the photograph given here, which is of a bread. Okay, most of the fungi are basically absorptive heterotrophs. Okay, it means digest food first and then absorb into their bodies, or basically in their cells. Okay, how do they digest food first and then absorb? They can do the process with the help of digestive enzymes. Okay, with the use of digestive enzymes produced by the fungi. So the first step of their food absorption will be release of the enzymes which are able to break down organic materials or their host in the case of a parasitic fungi. Okay, and the food is broken down into smaller particles. Food is broken down into smaller particles and absorbed, and they store food energy as glycogen, Now, as I told you, there are multicellular forms and unicellular forms of the fungi, and one of the most important role of the fungi in the ecosystem is of decomposers and recyclers of the nutrients in the environment. Okay, decomposers word. Okay, they are basically they break down the complex organic materials into simpler ones, and these molecules can be used by the other organisms very easily. Okay, recyclers, they are involved in various cyclic processes of the environment, such as nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, sulfur cycle, etc. Okay, most are multicellular fungi, mostly multicellular, but the one group of the fungi, which is a yeast, is basically a unicellular. Okay, they lack true roots, stems, and leaves because they are not plants. The diagram given on the right hand side here is of a multicellular mushroom. Okay, and the case of yeast, which is a unicellular of a single cell, which are generally oval or a little bit of round in shape also, depending again on the species. Please have a look at the molds given here. Okay, in which I have covered Aspergillus niger. Okay, where in the case of diagram A, where you can clearly see the hyphae. Now, what is hyphae? Okay, hyphae are the extended structures, okay, of the fungi, and basically fungal thallus consists of a hyphae, and a mass of hyphae is called a mycelium. Okay, simply the group of hyphae is called as mycelium. Okay, where you can see clearly in the diagram A of a Aspergillus niger, these are the aerial hyphae given here, and also the presence of the vegetative hyphae. Okay, and this is a whole body of the fungal thallus. Whereas if you see the same one, okay, in the case of Aspergillus on agar medium, the colony is somewhat like this. Okay, colony is somewhat like this. Okay, where here you can see black spots. Okay, where you can see the black spots given here. Okay, similarly you can see the black spots here. These are the basically hyphae which can reproduce. These are the hyphae which can reproduce and which contains spores of the fungi, which contain the spores of the fungi. And the next comes the unicellular ones. The unicellular ones which are basically yeast, they divide by fission, okay, and budding. Okay, fission yeast divide symmetrically and budding yeast divide asymmetrically. Okay, please have a look of the cell. Okay, this one is a cell of a yeast and this one is the bud which is basically produced for the reproduction. Now let us assume this one is a yeast. Okay, a small cell, a small type of bud will be formed. Okay, this one is called budding. The process is called budding. Okay, so moving with the next one, dimorphism. As I told you, some of the fungi are dimorphic also. Some of the fungi are dimorphic also. Okay, which have what type of forms? Yeast like forms and mold like forms. Yeast are of single unicellular forms and molds are basically multicellular forms. Please have a look here. Okay, where you can clearly see a single cell forms, and these are the basically long filamentous structures which are basically multicellular forms, Okay, now few more characteristics of fungi which is related to the fungi. Cell walls are made up of chitin and the body as a whole of a fungi, okay, body as a whole of a fungi is called a thallus, okay, and grow as microscopic tubes or filaments, okay, microscopic tubes and filaments called hyphae. Okay, these are the hyphal structures. Okay, there are some of the fungi, okay, which may act as a predators also, okay, and some of the fungi are parasites also. Okay, now please see in this photograph where a nematode, basically it's a roundworm, okay, given here, okay, is being trapped by the fungi, is being basically trapped by the fungi. Okay, I'm trying to zoom in so that you can see the diagram more properly. Now see, this one are the structures of the fungi. Okay, these are the structures of the fungi, and this one is a basically a roundworm, okay, which is been trapped by the fungi. Okay, now moving forward, is given here. Now there are also mushrooms which basically are multicellular type of fungi, but their specialty is to form a fruiting bodies. Okay, what are fruiting bodies? Okay, these type of structures are basically called fruiting bodies, but some of them are edible ones, some of them are non-edible ones, which are basically poisonous, mushrooms. Okay, we would not be able to eat these mushrooms, okay, because they are poisonous ones. Okay, now the characteristics of the fungi. What are the basic characters, or what are the basic other characters of the fungi? Okay, which we have discussed 10 main characters of the fungi, I think. Okay, now in the case I have added some of the diagrams also. Okay, now they produce both sexual and asexual spores and are classified by their sexual reproductive structures. Okay, by their sexual reproductive structures. Okay, and these spores come in the various shapes. Okay, please have a look at different types of structures. It may be zoosporangium, sporangiospores. Okay, yeah, hyphal ones, conidiospores. Okay, so there are variety of even the conidiophore again. Okay, so there are variety of structures, sexual structures produced by the different types of fungi. Okay, through which we can identify the fungi. Okay, and they grow best in warm and moist environments. Mycology is the study of fungi. Mycologists study fungi. Okay, and fungicide is a chemical used to kill fungi. Okay, a fungicide is a chemical used to kill a fungi. Okay, one of the more characteristics of a fungi, there are various different types of fungi, which includes puffballs, yeast, mushrooms, toadstools, rust, smudge, ringworm, and molds. And some of the fungi, such as penicillium, can also produce antibiotic penicillin. Okay, now where are these fungi found? Okay, where are these fungi found? Fungi are either terrestrial or aquatic, and the latter living in the freshwater, or some are also found in the marine environments. But most of the fungi are basically terrestrial. Okay, and the freshwater species are usually found in clean and cool water because they do not tolerate high degrees of the salinity. However, some species are found in slightly brackish water, and few thrive basically in the highly polluted streams. And soil that is rich in the organic matter furnishes an ideal habitat for the number of species of the fungi. Okay, and a very few number of the species of the fungi are found in the dry areas, okay, or in habitats which have little or very little or no amount of the organic matter present in the environment. Okay, they all grow in almost grow in temperate or the tropical regions of the world, but there is a sufficient moisture to enable them to grow. There are some fungi, basically rare ones, which are found in Arctic and Antarctic regions, but they are found to be living in the symbiosis with the algae. Okay, in the form of lichens. Okay, so lichens are basically there are many number of lichens. Okay, is basically association between fungi and algae, okay, and one such association has been also found with the plants also. Okay, through a mycorrhizae. And what are mycorrhizae? About 3/4 of all the vascular plants form association called mycorrhizae, which is basically the association of plant roots with the fungi. But it's not a parasitic relationship. Okay, it is a relationship, it is a beneficial relationship between plants and fungi. Okay, now moving towards the end of our lecture. Okay, now please again have a look at another video. Okay, this video is of a fungi. Okay, this video is of a fungi. It's an time-lapse type of It's a time-lapse video. It's a time-lapse video. I'm again repeating it, where you can see various different types of fungi. And most of the fungi seen here is say mushrooms.